Well, thank you everybody for being here. We really appreciate the fact that you took the time out of your day to be here. So thank you very, very much. Um, Today's session is a participatory session, so we hope that you'll come with some ideas for sharing. All of you have been through some very difficult times the last couple of years with your clubs and what's been going on in our world, and you guys have done a fantastic job, so we congratulate you on that. But hopefully in this session we'll talk about some of the things that have gone right, have gone wrong, and what we learned from it. So I'm going to turn this session over to Henry, so he can walk us through just some thoughts that he put together of some questions to get the conversation going. So if you'd like to speak, go ahead and just raise your hand and turn your microphone turn your microphone on and come on to the session and share your thoughts. So thanks again for being here. Henry, without further ado, I will go ahead and introduce you and let you do your intro, and I will bring up your PowerPoint. So don't forget to get your credits. I put the link in the chat session, to the link to go to get your credits, and I'll give the password out at the very end. So Henry, it's all yours.
Thank you, Beth, and thanks everyone for participating. As Beth mentioned, the goal of these roundtables is conversation. In every study we've seen, whether it's the national body, whether it's the chapters, what club managers are saying is that they value networking. They value the opportunity to interact with one another. And that was the foundation of this idea for having some roundtable discussions. This is not a presentation from Henry. This is not a trends or best practices session. I'll certainly be happy to share with you things that I'm seeing in Florida and around the country. And at the same time, you're going to find yourself with questions being posed to you in hopes that you will share with one another. I know a number of you on this call and have a depth of experience and perspective, and I hope we get a chance to share those things. So with that said, Beth, let's go ahead and jump into our first question. National Golf Foundation came out this week with an update. We lost part of April last year, some of March, and still rounds were up 25, 35% in different parts of the country and nationwide. That surge has continued this year through the first 3-4 months of 2021, continued increases, as mentioned, partly due to the fact that some clubs were closed in early parts of 2020. So there's this tremendous surge, and the question is, how do you see that impacting your clubs? Is it going to continue? Do you believe that the surge is passing, that the wave has crested, and you're going to start migrating backwards to normal usage patterns? What are your thoughts?
Okay, this is your time to share.
I'm being asked that question a lot. So to give you all a couple seconds to collect your own thoughts, I'm being asked that question a lot. And my answer at this point is, I believe it's too soon to know. We're seeing tremendous demand. We're finding clubs that have never used tee times being pushed either because of community guidelines or because of their own cautionary steps trying to manage this increased demand for golf tee times. But my answer when people ask me this question is that it's too soon to know, that it's something that we have to monitor and watch. I think there are indicators for those of you who are using any sort of an online reservation system. You can start to compare metrics and see what your trend line is showing, because that's where it will show first, is in reservations. It will also show, if you look at the NGF data, wholesale orders for golf equipment continue strong. There's been no abatement in that. So a lot of the people who are providing supplies to golfers are betting that it's going to continue. I'm interested in your points of view. Anybody having a thought on that as it relates to your club and your perspective?
Henry, good morning. This is Michael.
Hey, Michael.
How are you, sir?
Great.
Thanks for having us. Looking forward to it today. The one thing I think, Pat, trend we saw is people that may have only played once a week. With COVID, the outdoor experience, they're playing 3 and 4 times a week. I think that trend will continue. So we're seeing about 20% increase in rounds from a year ago, and kind of in the same statistics as you indicated. But for us, I think I think they're just enjoying playing more, because there was far less activities available for them. So I don't see that going away.
Michael, at Harbor Ridge, are you seeing that on your non-golf activities as well?
I think anything outdoor, tennis, we haven't got pickleball here yet, but our outdoor dining, everything was activities just within the club itself. Absolutely.
Are you seeing that with boating as well?
Oh, the boating industry is booming. Yeah, the slip sales have really turned around. Those interested in buying a boat, they can't even find one at the moment. They're on the wait list to get a boat. So the water front initiative and interest is certainly, it's been dynamic for sure.
Great. How about for others of you? Michael, thanks for pitching in and getting everyone started.
I'm happy to jump in, Henry.
Hey, Steve.
Good morning, everybody. And thank you all for having this. I think, like you said, dialogue is incredibly important. For those of that you don't know, Williams Island, we don't have a golf course. We have a marina, we have a restaurant, we have a spa, we have tennis. And for us, the year over year and versus pre-pandemic sales, we're up tremendously. And the last 3 months, we have seen some people from the buildings. We have 2,000 units on property. We have seen some migration north, but we have huge increases in food and beverage, huge increases in tennis, huge increases in spa treatments. People are working out feverishly and they're pampering themselves. And it's been a blessing. Month over month, from last month to this month, we're down about 10% in the spa. And that's the only revenue area that is showing some weakness. And then for those of you that are in communities that track real estate transactions, out of the 2,000 units that we have, we normally do between 55 to 60 transactions a year. We've already met and exceeded that in the first 4 months of the year. We're at over 70 transactions. And so in South Florida, where there was a real estate glut, we had over 220 units on property available 8 months ago. We now have somewhere in the neighborhood of about 140 units available. So we're seeing, compression, people staying and people using the facilities even more. And I think that's because we focused on experiences and safety, obviously, with an older clientele.
Very insightful. And of course, all of you in Florida are beneficiaries of the tax migration. The folks at Bloomberg Analytics have done some great work on how many people are migrating from high state income states to Florida. And so I believe you're going to continue to see that. For any of you who need data on that point, as I mentioned, Bloomberg Analytics is the best I have seen. And if you don't have access to that, let me know. I'll be happy to share with you some of the charts that we're looking at. But Florida, Tennessee, Texas, all growing significantly, while people are migrating out of essentially the states between Washington, D.C. and Boston, and then over into the Midwest, let's just say from Cleveland west to the Twin Cities. So a lot of folks looking for a tax home, and that's going to have some ripple effects into the club industry. One is you'll have more people who are whose seasonal relationship with you is shorter, because they're claiming non-resident status in those states where they've been paying high taxes, and they're claiming full-time residency in Florida, and that will ripple through the club industry. For our friends up north, it means they're going to have a lot more people wanting to go non-resident. It means a lot of you are going to have, as Steve and Michael pointed out, expanded demand on your programs and facilities. Any others of you see it either differently or have other examples you can share? Go ahead, Michael.
Just a question, how long do they expect the window to remain open for the migration to continue? And we're seeing it as well. We've had the highest number of real estate sales than we've ever had in the history. In the boom, we had 76. We're at 90 with a few months to go. So, but is it a year? Is it more than that?
First of all, probably the practical answer will be it will continue until those states with high state income taxes change their taxing structure. You know, the fact of the matter is those states still have to generate the same sort of revenues in order to provide all the state services. So they're going to have to find ways to transfer things off of income and transfer them into property ownership or other categories where they can make up that difference. In the state of Florida, I can tell you that all of the publicly traded home builders and developers are scrambling to try to find land and opportunities for development in the state of Florida, especially along the coasts and in the greater Orlando market area. So in my books, there's no likelihood that you're going to see a slowdown in growth in Florida. And furthermore, you're going to start to see some infilling where, like the company I used to work for would look and say, if it's less than 400 units, we're not interested. And now they're looking at 60 and 80 unit projects, little small fill-in places where they can maintain revenue growth in their own categories. Publicly traded companies always under pressure to grow revenue.
This is Ken Green. I would echo your thoughts that this migration is not a flash in the pan. If you look at it, at least in our market in Palm Beach, people follow the business, and it's with, as much as, the related group might be quote unquote sucking wind in Hudson Yards in New York City, they've bought up all of the Class A office space in West Palm Beach and are building more and more and more. Why? Because all the financial services firms, hedge funds, private equity, banking, so forth, are taking a footprint. They may not be relocating corporately 100% yet, but they're putting their toes in the water in South Florida, commercial real estate for offices. And that's not for their people to work when they're on vacation in Florida. That's for people to relocate. And so people follow the business. And so at least a 3 to 5 year, kind of projecting out. And as things continue to grow, real estate will continue to be hot. People come down and, spend, 20, 30, 50, $100 million for a residence. They want all the bells and whistles that go with that lifestyle, which includes membership at clubs and on and on and on. So it's not going away anytime, in the immediate future.
You bet. Yeah, I think you're spot on, Ken. I cite the company called Alliance Bernstein. Any of you guys may have money invested with them. A Wall Street firm right downtown in the financial district relocated their offices to Nashville, Tennessee. I guess that was last year or so. Do you think all those guys suddenly decided that they like country music? Or do you think they like the idea that their corporate headquarters were in a state with no state income tax, where they could all claim that to be a primary residence and stay in their same apartments in Manhattan the rest of the year? I think we're going to see more and more of that. One of the derivatives of this pandemic has been what we've all discovered, which was you don't exactly have to be at work to do the work. And, for those of us who come up in the club business, you kind of got to be where you provide those services. But so many knowledge workers can be wherever they wish to be. And that's going to be one of the big changes in America.
Morning, Henry.
I'd like to ask a question. Okay.
I'm sorry, Ben?
Yes.
No, go ahead, David.
Yeah, not so much a question, but agreeing with what's been saying. And another metric to consider is retirement of the baby boomers. They got pushed down the road back in 2010. And then I think with the pandemic, a lot of people were holding on because income was good, and the pandemic changed the mentality. Said maybe it's not as safe to be at work. So we saw a bunch of flash retirement happening. The market stayed really, really strong. And I think that's been really good for South Florida. And the baby boomers should continue retiring probably for the next 5 to 7 years.
Right. By the way, there's a demographer by the name of Fry, Frey, with the Brookings Institution. For all of you who want to kind of be preparing and looking down the road in your 5-year plans, the demographic work that he's doing at Brookings is kind of forward-looking and has proven to be very reliable. So that may be a reference point that you want to tap into. Like I say, for doing your own diligence in preparing for your clubs. I feel like I cut someone short. I didn't mean to speak over someone. We've kind of jumped from the surge, which I think it sounds to me as though we're all trying to find answers and more importantly, data that help us to support our understanding of what's happening around us. Clearly, the Florida real estate market is white hot, and all of the people that I believe know what they're talking about are people who are saying that certain of these states like Florida are going to continue to grow and prosper. That's going to put more and more pressure on public services. That's going to make destinations that are safe havens like your clubs even more attractive to people. So you should expect a good run in your clubs. And frankly, if you're not seeing pretty significant pent-up demand, you need to be taking a look at the club and asking yourself, what is it that's not working for our brand or how we're projecting our brand out to the buyer audience? For those of you who haven't freshened your relationships with the realtors who are active in your market area, that would certainly be something that would be wise for you to do. So something to think about there. Beth, I'm kind of watching the time and I want to be sure we get a chance to cover our topic. So, I was talking about strategy and some of the changes that are coming on. What kind of changes are you intending to make as a result of the new demand, the growth in usage of your facilities? Tell me how you're changing things. The most common changes we're seeing nationwide is expanded hours of operations, changes in the way food in particular is being prepared and presented. For the most part, finding labor is the greatest pressure point right now in clubs and in the hospitality industry. And let's face it, in some cases now that travel is starting to swing back into full swing, our competitors in the hospitality and lodging industries are going to be out competing the club industry in many cases for compensation and benefits. So that's going to make it tougher for us to get access to workers. Are many of you finding that limitation on labor to be a problem, and how are you responding to it?
Nobody having labor issues?
I think we all are.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good morning, it's Helen. We
Hey, Helen.
instituted, we upped our referral fee for employees and possibly considering, we normally do a referral fee after 90 days and possibly instituting one after 6 months if the same person stays.
Wow. And Helen, what is the referral fee you're paying, if you don't mind sharing?
$250.
I was in Naples a couple of weeks ago and drove past an IHOP, the pancake joint, and where they normally on the sign out front have a sign that says, kids eat free or blueberry pancakes, all you can eat or something like that. The sign instead said $750 signing bonus.
Wow.
Yeah, to work at IHOP. So that gives you a sense of the level of desperation that is happening around you. I believe that we're going to continue to feel that desperation for some time.
Yeah, restaurants, I live in Broward County, and some of them have changed their hours of operation or closed for a day because they
Right.
just can't have, especially the ones that are smaller. And it's like a husband and wife arrangement. But, you know, we obviously, most of the people who work in restaurants don't have the option for, you know, benefits. So that's definitely a plus that we try to also push through.
Right. Average hour escalating, average hourly wage is escalating, and I believe will hold, that escalation will hold, because we're going to find that if we don't continue to pay competitive wages, we won't be able to keep people or recruit people, and that becomes an issue. I believe, I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again for the point of emphasis. I don't think we'll ever look back and see that club managers stood taller than they did in 2020. As a group, as a uniform body of professionals, club managers demonstrated themselves in 2020 to be resilient beyond measure, resourceful, innovative. Those are all characteristics that are going to continue to be demanded of you. You know, we had so many clubs that at this time last year were upside down on their budgets by $1 million and more. Clubs that had missed their spring weddings or mitzvahs or private parties or events, with no clear solution in sight at this point. And then, you know, as you started to get your feet under you and started finding solutions, who would have ever imagined there would be so much success in takeout food from clubs? Darndest thing I would have ever seen. And in most cases, clubs made up that ground that they had lost and then some. So, you know, one of the takeaways in my books from 2020 is to look and say, what did you learn from your takeaway option, and how can you continue to carry that forward into the future? The example I most like to provide as a consideration is Sunday afternoon picnics. You know, any of you who are golfers know of the great old course at St. Andrews in Scotland, and on Sunday afternoon, that great old golf course is closed. It's the public park for the townspeople of St. Andrews, and they're out there with their picnic hampers and blankets and soccer balls, and it's family time. And while I'm not suggesting that you should close your golf course or your club on Sunday afternoon, there may be an opportunity for you to introduce Sunday afternoon picnics, or picnics on any other afternoon for that matter. You've got the weather and you've got plenty of time flexibility, but that becomes an opportunity for your culinarians to prepare the picnics to order, you know, ordered in advance rather, so that you can manage the workflow, and at the same time people can come, socialize, eat, have a pleasant memory-making afternoon at the club, and that may be a real benefit to you without having to pay a lot of service people in the process. So may just be an option for you to consider as you move forward. But I suspect you'll all come up with better ideas than that one, for finding ways that you engage your members, give them an opportunity to socialize. They're obviously wanting to eat. Who doesn't? And so I think that may be a matter for you to consider.
David, did you have something?
Yeah, I think we approached it similarly with increasing the bounty bonus. We went from 250 to 500, and then put in place a second measure. So first is 30 days, and then the second one is after 90 days. Really not helping dramatically at all. I think we're all kind of on hold until the financial incentives from the government abate. And then when that happens, does the market get flooded? And then have we put ourselves in a position where we've sort of created the heightened minimum wage out of circumstance?
There is that inflationary risk as it relates to compensation, no doubt about it. And that really comes down in my books to being able to evaluate your operational teams and look at them in the context of which ones you intend to keep over the long haul. I think by this time last year, most everyone was starting to make some of those judgments already. But are there other tactics that any of you intend to use as far as recruiting short term and then deciding what you're going to do long term?
Henry, I think you hit the nail on the head. It needs to be looked at in terms of a short term and long term approach, because there's two parts to this equation. There's recruitment and then there's retention. Clearly, there are challenges for some on the recruitment side. There are other challenges on the retention side. And so one of the things we just recently implemented was adding another, a 1 week, an added 1 week vacation for all full-time eligible employees, hourly, salaried, exempt, whatever the case may be. If you've been with the club for 6 months, what we did was, because it's the opposite season of the northern clubs, the summer is the slower time for us. So we called it a summer bonus vacation. So you have to use it within this prescribed period. Unlike a regular vacation, you carry it forward to next year. It's kind of a use it or lose it scenario. But when we had long tenured staff finding themselves capped out at 4 weeks, we closed for a multitude of weeks during the summer for project-based related things. It's a benefit to the staff members. Clearly, they're here. And even if there are other opportunities that get presented in terms of maybe, an additional dollar here or there at another club, it provides that level of retention. We're also looking at, and I think we should all look at, enhancing our 401k matching programs for our staff members as well. These are the things that are not immediately, immediate short-term out-of-pocket expenses, but they have stickiness as it relates to the long term.
Really good point.
I jump in.
Thanks, Ken. Was someone wanting to speak?
Yeah, it's Steve. Can I
Sure,
jump-
Steve.
Ken, I want to thank you for that. I mean, you added something that was missing from my personal strategic plan. So we, along with the theme of the short-term, long-term, short-term, we were concerned about just, a hiring frenzy and how that would affect our culture. So we made the decision and we communicated with our team that there would be a period of overtime, and that if they had people with great attitude, great, ability to contribute, we'd be happy to have them on, but we're not just, after bodies. I love the idea of rewarding people that have stayed with us with some extra paid time off. I think that really completes the loyalty cycle, the benefit cycle, and so on and so forth. So I appreciate that particular idea. The department that we've had the greatest challenge in, ironically, is security. And we haven't changed our signing bonus. We haven't changed our rates and this and that and the other, because we think that's all short-term pressure. And once you increase the rate in one place, the domino effect, the repercussions throughout the organization are long lasting. And one of the things that we did this year is we had no dues increase to the residents because of the performance of the directors and the team. And so what we're seeing right now is the cost of overtime is less than new recruitment, and our employees are even more loyal and appreciative. The hardest thing, though, is continuing to communicate to them, hey, save your money. This isn't going to last forever, kind of thing, So that's what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thanks for adding that, Steve. And I noticed that in the chat that Kevin Carroll had volunteered that dues are going to rise beyond inflation. And Kevin, I'm not sure if you want to add anything to that. Really good insight.
Yeah, Henry, I think members are going to understand that this labor shortage is not just in clubs, it's every industry, and all of our members' businesses are certainly going to be affected by it. So this isn't anything that they are not, won't become used to. And I believe they're going to know that the cost of doing business is going to go up, and they are the owners of the business. So they will have to contribute more to make sure, we simply don't have the option of closing dining rooms. Can you imagine finishing a round of golf or tennis or whatever and want to stop in for a club sandwich and have a closed sign on the door to the grill room? That's not going to happen. Members are going to demand that, we have staff no matter what it takes. And in our board, I mean, we've discussed this, and we're highly seasonal. So we actually close next week for 5 months, and we don't know what will happen over the course of the next 5 months. And some of our staff who've been loyal over the years may get a summer job and then be enticed to stay through the next season. But our members have already been put on notice, or our board has been put on notice, that we will do what we have to do. We've increased our wages as our staff are leaving for the season. We're already telling them what their wage will be for next year. We pay a Christmas bonus, we pay an Easter bonus, we pay an end of season bonus. We are doing referral fees, which will be something new for us. So we're doing all those things. But again, if we've got to raise the wages at the beginning of the season or the middle of the season or whatever it is, we will certainly do it.
Understood. Pretty practical and pragmatic there. One thing, Steve, your mention of needing security. One source that I have seen that's proving fairly good in certain skilled or trained categories is folks who are mustering out of military service. The military overall is downsizing substantially. So there are a lot of people who have certain skill sets that might be worthy of your consideration. So that may be one option for you in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great thought. I appreciate that, Henry. I think we're seeing not only are we in competition with the other security companies, we're in competition with local law enforcement as well.
You bet.
So it's an interesting challenge, but thank you.
Yep, these are peculiar times all the way around. Beth, why don't we jump ahead to our next topic on number 3, talking some about governance. What kind of demands are you seeing being placed on you and your board president or other key leaders in terms of governance? And again, to give you a couple seconds to think, one of the things that I'm seeing on a regular basis is more rules enforcement pressure on boards and board leaders. Folks are acting out their frustrations with the limitations on their mobility, limitations on services, and some of those frustrations are acting out in terms of poor behavior in the club. Are many of you having that experience at your clubs? And if so, how can you describe them? Everybody's doing great. I was at a club the other day where a member who was frustrated with certain rules at the club actually confronted the board president in the golf shop. And when they each had said what they had to say, and the board president said, "Gee, I'm sorry, I think we better just agree to disagree," and the member could not accept that, and the board president was then just trying to kind of separate from this member, and the member would not allow him to do so, kept positioning his body where the board president could not leave. And then the next step was the frustrated member chest bumping the president until the professional staff could step in and say, "Hey, look, we pointed to the president and said, why don't you go out the back door?" And pointed to the frustrated member, "You just need to cool off for a few minutes." But that's the worst one I've run across, of course, resulting in a suspension of the member for a period of time. Others of you seeing any of those kinds of things? The more common rules issues that we're running into are dress code, guest policy, access. Some people who are finding limited services frustrating to them, who want to bypass the hostess or bypass the golf staff or the tennis staff and simply take control of a table or a court or a tee time, which was not theirs, and working on the theory that now I have it, you have to make me give it back. And again, those poor behaviors, those are the ones that I guess I would categorize. Are any of you having that same experience?
Henry, I would suggest that, this topic was relative, May, June, July, August of last year. I'm sure that we all experienced bad behavior and rule breakers, and things don't apply to us as far as masks, temperature checks, and this and that and the other. And I wrote more suspension and violation letters this year than any of the other 5 years that I've been here. But most of the times I'm fortunate to have a strong president. We would sit down with these people and intervene. And, fortunately, the majority of these were resident to resident. Very few were resident to staff or resident to board, and so, from that perspective, you just manage it, right? But as far as being the board president, again, I was very lucky. I have somebody that is a good partner. Some of the rest of the board were non-existent. They just kind of went away and said, "You guys handle it." And as you know, because you were here, and thankfully and appreciatively, you managed a workshop between our board members and our building presidents. You know, everybody wanted to go in a completely different direction. So if you didn't have a strong partner and it was left to you to just make all the operational decisions, you're exposed. But if you have the right mixture of governance and operations, you know, I think it was easy. And communication was the biggest premium, you know, because you have the state and the county and the city all different things about these emergency orders. So for us, I mean, we probably sent out and made more videos and made more YouTube stuff than any other time before. And it's affected the way that we communicate going forward. And I know that all the people on here do a great job, you know, with social media and communication. But in this last year, there was no such thing as over communicating anything.
That's for sure. Usually that's the case. Beth, were you going to add something there?
Tom Jordan has his hand up. He'd like to say something.
Oh, thanks, Tom.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. To the point of topic 3, right after COVID, or just before COVID hit the fan, I had a first-year president, first-year treasurer, first-year finance chair, and a first-year executive vice president.
Wow.
And in late February, early March, they were new to their positions. They really didn't understand where the lines are drawn between managers running the day-to-day operation and the board members supposedly observing from 30,000 feet. And in our early meetings through March, the executive committee, which, as I said, were all pretty much brand new board members and hadn't had much time working with me, their predictions and their fears of doom and gloom financially and cash-wise on outside of the accrual basis, they had terrible nightmares, and we had way too many meetings over how the budget can be managed through the pandemic or through the downturn. And it got to the point where I had submitted 7 different budgets after the original, and I never change a budget. I set a budget, we go through the fiscal year, and we just asterisk where the budget is off. But I had to write 7 different scenarios after every financial, just to try and convince them that we're not dying here. Actually, they had it at one point. The finance chair told the executive committee that we're probably going to lose $600,000 in operations this year. And as every month unfolded, when the financial statements came out, there were huge positive variances. And I just, over the past 15 months, we have a net income of $434,000 through the pandemic. So it took my president, the point I'm trying to make is the president, who didn't have a whole lot of experience working with me, it took him a good 6 months to get comfortable with, oh, he knows what he's doing. He's correct with what he's saying, and the numbers are working out. And we, quite honestly, we had our best year financially, and we gained more members than we've ever gained. And we're, for the first time in 50 years, the club has a waiting list for members. So it took the board president and his executive team a good 6 months to get used to the fact that I and my team know exactly what we're doing. We were dealt a lousy hand, but we knew what we were doing to get through it, and we can carry them through. And where I didn't get warm and fuzzies for the first month after the president became president, we're now best of friends, and he understands he's a 30,000 feet high guy, and me and my team are the people that are going to drive the train.
That's great. What a great example that is. I've seen that in a lot of clubs. In fact, I've seen a few board presidents who have crumbled under the pressure of this coronavirus pandemic. I have not seen any club managers crumble. I have seen some who prospered even more so than others, but I've seen everyone step up to the line. Every club manager with whom I've been acquainted has shouldered this burden in the best of fashion and brought their staff along with them. And like I said, I think we'll look back on 2020 and say that was a great year for club managers. I'm mindful and that the sun does not shine on the same dog's back every day. And I believe that we're going to see market changes. And that goes to the next topic that I wanted to put out in front of everyone around the idea of technological change. You know, the pandemic brought on the need for certain new technologies and new capabilities. What kind of changes are you making in your club as a result of the pandemic, and what are your hopes or expectations from it? Anybody want to be the first to speak to that?
David has his hand raised.
Yeah, hey Henry, we actually, the pandemic was a kind of a great opportunity for us in a number of different ways. One of them being technology. We got out ahead probably in April or so last year and installed a Zoom room for about $6,500, and we started performing governance and strategic planning throughout the pandemic, disseminating the different laws that we were digesting and understanding the impact they had for the club. And now we're sort of coming out of it, still hosting our monthly meetings on Zoom. And we've gone from an average of maybe 15 or so participants in the audience to 45, 50 participants remotely. And it's giving us a big opportunity to sort of communicate faster and to a wider group. And it's helping us to get things done quicker. We also, to sort of continue services, we started Zooming fitness classes. We took advantage of the pandemic and did a $15 million renovation that we had already sort of planned for, but pulled the trigger maybe a little bit early during the issues. And now the fitness studios are being armed with Zoom capabilities. So people, whether they're out on a cruise somewhere or in Europe traveling, they can still participate in group fitness here at the club as a benefit.
That's a great idea. And have you found that you've gotten good participation, or is it somewhat spotty?
No, it's consistent. We probably had 20 or so people with Zoom fitness in the height of it. And we probably still, even though this is a downtime in the season, we're seeing people in New Jersey who are in the classes and in New York. And it's become a benefit that people appreciate even from a seasonal point of view.
Excellent. Other technological solutions you've found that you intend to continue? Any of you? One that I'm seeing that it seems to be persisting is the whole capability of geofencing the club, being able to use the club in a way that you can draw on, and knowing where your members are and being able to see that the services that they would want, you can address because you know where they are. Especially in this time when maybe we're short of staff in certain places. Any of you seeing that where geofencing is maybe an advantage to you?
David has his hand up.
Okay, sorry, David didn't see it.
I think the hand was still up from before. Thanks, though.
Sorry.
Steve, did you share?
My advice to everybody on this whole business of technology is the famous quote from, what was it, Winston Churchill, never waste a good crisis. This is a great time for you to take a look at your communications technology and your services technology, because this may be a good time for you to be upgrading that, because people are so eager for communications. What we've been saying for several years, is club communications are the thing I hear criticized most commonly when I'm visiting clubs for focus groups and so forth. The standard line is, really love the club, but communications around here are terrible. But then I turn to the club manager or the board members and say, I'm being told in the focus group that communications are terrible. and they look at me as if to say, what the heck? All we do all the time is communicate. But then you come to find out that that particular person who said that never opens his or her emails, never participates in any of the programs. So there's a need to keep making redundant and reiterative communications using multiple media to try to increase effectiveness. Someone mentioned a moment ago the use of video, and we certainly are seeing how much more participation and open rate there is with video than there is written word. So that may be something for you to be thinking about if you haven't started doing that already. The most frequent usage of video that we're seeing is what would have normally been in the club newsletter, the letter from the president, the letter from the general manager, those things that can be made into a little 60, 90-second video are certainly things that are resonating and proving to be very effective and engaging for members.
We have somebody with a hand raised. It's their code is TCT. I'm not sure exactly who that is.
Yes, hello. My name is Fabio Vasconcelos, and I'm the director of tennis at Harbor Ridge. And what we did, yes, thank you. We worked with their communications department, and we were able to produce some videos, 60-second videos on tennis tips for all of our members for the time that the club was closed. So the members were very happy that they could continue to receive information on tennis and to improve their games while the pandemic was on.
Oh, well done. That's a nice one. I could use some tennis tips, Fabio.
Anytime.
Any other technological steps any of you are taking that you would like to share?
David has his hand up.
Yeah,
Great.
another quick Zoom amenity. We partnered with several of our different beverage vendors, and we're hosting educational series over Zoom. So people have the opportunity to buy the spirits in advance. We package them nicely with pairings and things, and then we host a Zoom event. That usually reaches 20 to 40 people, including folks who are out of town who can pick up the spirits locally. They appreciate the opportunity for the education.
Sure. People like to be stimulated intellectually. This business of lifelong learning seems to be resonating with people. If you read any of the AARP studies or any of the promotions targeted to retired people, without fail, it's keep your brain health, keep using your brain, keep exercising your brain. So those kinds of programs are certainly resonating with people in the 55 plus category. Probably doesn't hurt the rest of us either, but certainly resonating with that category. Beth, I'm mindful of our time. I sure don't want to overstay my welcome. I've been grateful to everyone for their participation. Before we wrap up, anybody have any questions you want to throw out for us all to kick around, or that we should wrap up on? Well, again, I'm going to thank you for participating. I know how busy everyone is. I hope you get the full benefit of the education credits. Anybody who has to sit here and listen to me for an hour at least should get something out of it. So I hope that you stay well, that you and yours continue to prosper. So thanks for being here.
Thank you, Henry, and thank you for everybody participating today. The password for today is IDEA, IDEA, IDEA. Thank you for being here. We look forward to seeing you all. Don't forget that we do have summer conference. Actually, it's more fall conference in September coming up in Delray. If you haven't signed up, please go ahead and do so. Rooms are going quickly. People want to see each other. So again, thank you, Henry, so much for always being so generous with your time and your suggestions and your counsel. So we appreciate you very much, and everybody have a great day. Again, the password is IDEA. Have a good day.
Bye, everyone.